I go back to Auguste Comte. I think that the left at bottom wants to make things better. I think it would be wrong of me to suggest otherwise. I think that they're sincerely motivated, at least originally. But I've read too much of what can happen about people who want to make things better. They get into positions of power and they don't like to give it up. And I think one of our great writers, great novelists, was Orwell. And to read his story is so telling about what happens in a fascist communist state, which is what Big Brother presides over, and how to make his life better, or make life better within Oceania for people like Winston Smith. To make life better for him, you have to destroy him. You have to make him confront his greatest fear. And then you have to control him. Once you've broken him, you have to control him by keeping him drunk all the time so he won't resist. Is the literary equivalent of what Orwell says in 1984, which is, if you want a picture of the future, think of a boot grinding on the human face forever. Now, the left wants to make things better, but I'm enough of an actonite to know that, to believe that power does corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Orwell says, in such modes, in such circumstances, people get power for power. They torture for the purposes of torturing. There is no other rationale. And I then go to that wonderful quote by Malraux. I think it's Malraux who talked to a woman who was jailed, and she had gone into communism believing in its many virtues, and then she gets put in jail, and she says to him, and then one night I heard screams. That's the picture that Orwell says of a boot grinding on the human face. And I think although liberalism, Comteans, Auguste Comteans, J. Allen Smithians, a political behaviorist, 1902, something like that, Spirit of American Government, great influence in American political science. I think these people want to get into it to make things better. In their defense, that's what they want to do. But in making things better, they have to tinker and keep tinkering, and ultimately they become fascinated with their ability to tinker and control, and it's a bad trip the rest of the way. This gets also into You mentioned, we talked about Strauss a little bit, and how Strauss is sort of referenced and either revered or detested as one of the fathers of neoconservatism, so-called. And it's led to bizarre, obscure, weird, logical explanations to blame Leo Strauss for the Iraq War. Come on. But anyway, that's the way it went. As the left wants to make things better, it wants to change our institutions because it has seen our institutions heretofore as corrupt, or it sees them as they exist now as corrupt. So it wants to change them and make them better, and that leads to more tinkering, and that leads to the collapse of public education. So I think that it's after wanting desperately to make things better according to their definition of what better may be, but in the process only makes them worse.